let's walk through all the consequences of debt, all right? All right, so your credit, if it does get trashed, it impacts almost every physical aspect of your life. So the first thing that's important is housing. So it affects both housing opportunities and housing costs. If you're renting, any landlord is going to run your credit, and housing is so competitive right now. And there was so many times when I'd want an attractive rental as a single person, I'd get in the queue and I would just wait for them to run my credit. The moment they ran my credit, I'd get a call and I'd get put right in the front. So if a landlord, usually when they're trying to decide who to give a property to, if it's competitive, they're going to give it to the person with the higher credit, because that means you're trustworthy, you'll pay your rent. That's the idea. So it does affect you there. Housing costs, if you have bad credit, it can be, let's say you get a $500,000 mortgage to buy a house, because the average house right now is around $600,000, and let's say you're borrowing $500,000, you will spend an extra $100,000 of interest if your credit is bad versus good. So an additional $100,000 of interest when your credit's bad versus good. So it's a lot cheaper to borrow for housing for a mortgage with good credit. Job opportunities. So if it's a competitive job market and they're running your credit and yours is bad and the other person's is good, that could very well be a reason why you don't get the job. Utility costs. Bad credit triggers deposit requirements and cosign demands. Insurance costs may go up and drive higher premiums. Phone costs. Bad credit triggers deposit requirements and cosign demands. So this just happened this year, or I guess last year. A congressman, he was denied his apartment over bad credit. So this was featured in CNN. And so they're like, the Gen Z congressman had bad credit and then he wasn't able to get an apartment. So it affects you. You know, credit affects you. And this doesn't necessarily mean you have a credit card, but we want to make sure we have good credit. So the idea about credit is we want to grow our available credit and never use it. So that's the idea of credit. So it's a lot like a redwood. We want our credit to grow massive like a redwood and never actually chop it down. So we don't want to harvest it. We want to just grow it. So being a good steward of credit means you become trustworthy enough to where people are giving you the ability to borrow, but then you're not actually borrowing. And if you can do that, that's going to drive up your credit worthiness, your credit score, so that landlords and everyone who is involved in the business of running credit and looking at your trustworthiness are going to really trust you. And ensure that you never have more than 8% of your available credit, that you're never using more than 8% of your available credit while also paying your full credit card balance at the end of the month. This will drive an 800 credit score if you can do this. So the 800 is the top. They call it the 800 Club. And so what happens with the credit bureaus, those 3 credit bureaus, they have data on your credit information that, let's say the dentist, if you don't pay a dentist bill, then the dentist will immediately send your information to a credit bureau saying that you're not paying your dentist bill, and then that creates a credit score that then goes really low, probably 400 or 500 credit score if that's the only thing showing up. And so in general, let's say that you got a credit card and it has $1,000 credit available, then you don't want to use more than 8% of that if you want a really good score. So keep it to less than $80 of credit used. Does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, if you have a credit card and then you stop using it, it's fine, and your credit history is building, and so the longer you have credit history, the more your score goes up. Right. So
if you don't use it for a long amount of time, they can close your account?
They may close it. It depends on the credit card company. Some may not. So I have one that I opened when I was in college, and I don't use it, but I don't close it because I like the credit history, and still they haven't closed it. I don't know. I bet you maybe some other ones do. Yeah.
Will they let you know before they close it, or they just close it?
Not always.
Not always. So all of you are going to be assigned to run your credit report, and then you can see whether it's officially closed or not. So when you run your credit report, it'll show you whether an account is closed, and so it's nice. Yeah.
How?
I'm going to show you how to run a credit report. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
If you don't spend any credit, your credit score can still grow at a much slower rate.
So you have to have available credit. So you have to have some sort of way that someone is saying that they are willing to lend you money for you to be credit visible. And once you're credit visible, then you have a score that then can go up as you. And the goal is how can I get more and more credit available? And so in one sense, you want to get some credit available. But what I do is every 6 months I call them and I ask for more. So anyone with a credit card, as long as you have a decent credit where you've paid all your bills and you're not in trouble, you can ask them every 6 months for more, and they're going to give you more. And so you slowly creep up your credit available. And so let's say as long as you're between 10 and 30%, you're going to have a good 700 score. But if you want to get into the 800s, just keep getting that credit available bigger and bigger every 6 months or so. Don't ask for more credit if you're in trouble. Then they're going to assume that you're in trouble and wanting to and that'll actually hurt your credit if you're asking for it when you're already heavy in debt and you're not paying your bills fully. Yeah.
So say you're doing like everything right, you're using only 8%. How long will it take for you to like build, say like 700, 800?
It's a bit mysterious to me how it depends on the situation because there's a lot of factors. And so if you only have one kind of debt, then it'll be slower for you. Whereas if you have a student loan debt and a credit card debt and a mortgage debt, then those are different variety of debts that help you. But that's a small thing. Credit history really helps. The number one way to ensure that your credit is good is to pay everything off, like pay all your bills, utility, cell phone. If you do that, you're going to be in the kind of mid 600s, low 700s. And then if you can get a lot of credit and not use it, then that pushes you into the high 700s, 800s. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay, this question might not make sense, but if you have 1,000 credit available and you are spending less than $80, is it better to pay that off immediately? Like I get home from buying whatever and pay it off immediately, or I wait to the end of the month? Like does it matter?
So if you do pay it off immediately, then that'll be the best possible thing. They don't tell you when they report your outstanding balance to the credit bureaus, and it's usually not when you pay it. So they'll just pick a random time during the month to report your outstanding balance. And so that's why even if you pay off your credit card at the end of the month, the credit bureaus are gonna see that you have an outstanding credit balance because they're just pushing your outstanding balance sometime in the middle of the month. So what I do, because I'm too busy to be paying off my credit card all the time, so I have them pay it off twice a month. So often you can tell a credit card company to pay off your balance twice a month instead of just once a month. And if they could do it once a week, I would do that. But the fastest they could do it just automatically was twice a month. So that have my credit used. And then I every 6 months, I have a calendar reminder to ask them. And it's just a button I press when I ask for more credit. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yeah.
I once tried to apply for more credit, but they asked for my income, and you have to have like a certain income to have more credit.
Okay, that's a fair point. They will ask for your income. So if you have no income, maybe you're not going to get anything extra. And but once you do start having income, then you want to start to you might in the beginning you're going to be this little Charlie Brown tree, and so you just want to protect this tree and not harvest it. You just want to grow it, and as your income grows, then the tree's going to grow, and so if you really want to be serious about not having a high utilization of your credit, use a debit card for everything else and just have that credit card sparingly. There are choices you can make. So for me, I actually have choices where sometimes I'll choose the cash back and I'll go past 30% because I know I'm not needing rentals. I already have a mortgage. So I actually will use my credit card more than I should because I'm getting extra cash. And I'm just doing that temporarily, and my credit score will dip below 800 during that time, but I'm getting cash, and then I'll stop, and then it'll go back up to 800. So you can kind of, it's a give and take. Does that make sense? And but yeah, it's really great. Sometimes a credit card company will actually ask you how much do you want, and then you negotiate. So if you ask for too much, they'll reject it, and then if it's too little, then you'll be like, oh, I should ask for more. So so my credit, initially was about 8,000, and then now it's almost 40,000 as I've grown it. And the more available credit you have, then it's easier to stay below that 8%. You know what I mean? So one of the coolest ways, well, any other questions before I move on? Yeah.
I'm still getting a little confused between credit and the money part. Credit is not per se a single credit is not a single dollar, is it?
Yeah, so this idea of credit, so available credit means, with available credit for a credit card means that they are willing to lend you money. And so they're going to tell you how much they're willing to lend you. And it's a revolving debt is what they call it. And so when you first get a credit card, it's going to be a small amount they're willing to lend you. So it could be, let's say, $2,000 is your available credit. And so if you swipe something and you buy something, let's say you go out and you get a computer for $1,000, then you've used $1,000 of your available credit, or 50%. And then if you pay it back, then it's called revolving debt because they give it right back to you, and now you reload it and you have $2,000 available again. Does that make sense? So credit means, to your credit, they're going to give you some amount you can borrow. And like other types of loans are different. So like a mortgage is they're just giving you money one time and you pay it back over a long period of time.
So it's a reputation score.
It's a what?
It's a reputation kind of score.
It's a reputation, yeah. Yeah. Okay, yeah, Ben?
So if, so like you said, like they were to give you $2,000.
Yep.
You were spending $1,000. If you didn't pay that back, that's how your credit score would go down.
Yeah, so if you don't pay it back, then you have an outstanding credit balance. Then you start getting charged really high interest, and your utilization will go up because your balance is going to grow. And as long as you're paying off that minimum balance, so that $20 a month, you'll be in good standing. Your credit shouldn't get hit because you're not defaulting on anything. So you're just paying more. Interest is growing exponentially against you. So let's say you owe $1,000 because that's how much you used, and you only gave them $20 minimum payment. Then the balance goes to $980, and that balance is going to grow if you keep using your credit card. It's going to show off that all your accounts are in good standing because you paid the minimum balance. But most likely your credit utilization is going to keep going up, and you're not going to be able to get into the 8% because you're not paying off your credit card. Does that? Yeah. We'll keep working through it. Yeah.
Okay, but you might answer this when you talk about car loans. So if
Yeah.
I had all the money to buy a car,
Yeah.
And I decided to pay for it using credit, would it be better to pay it off immediately as soon as I pay with the credit, or do like a monthly payment system to build my credit through, like to show that I'm reliable through long amounts of time paying off?
Yeah, when I got a car, they convinced me. So my car was about $11,000 at the time, and I had the cash. I was going to give them the cash. They said, "Hey, if you do the car loan, we'll knock off $3,000, and you get a car loan on your credit history that is a different type of. It's an installment type of loan." And so what I did is I did the car loan so that the car was only $8,000, and then I paid it off in 1 year. And so I realized that amount of interest was a couple $100, but I saved $3,000, and I added some variety to my credit report. But never have a loan for a long period of time where you could do cash. So I would only do the loan for less than a year. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Hector. Yeah.
at all costs, right? Even if
Yeah.
even if you have like even if you haven't bought anything with your credit card and you still have 2,000, it's still like wouldn't be the best to like
Yeah,
spend like 50%.
don't use your available credit like if you can help it. So you want to get a balance started, and then you don't want to use it. And you can use it. It's good to use it sparingly. You can go up a little bit here and there, but like have your credit card, use it sparingly, and then as your credit builds, then you can start using it more and getting more rewards. But in the meantime, use a debit card while you're waiting, and that, yeah, that's kind of the sequence that I would recommend. Yeah.
So, so like I'm one of those financially super illiterate people. At what point do they start charging you interest? Because you said that they'll like randomly send it
Yeah.
to like the loan peoples, and so when they send it to them, I assume that if it's at a random day, then they won't start charging you interest.
So if you don't pay it off at the end of the month, they will charge interest on whatever the outstanding balance is. So if you, let's say you owe $1,000 and you only pay the minimum payment of $20, then the $980 is now an outstanding balance that you have borrowed from them, and they will charge 20% plus interest on that outstanding balance.
Like because you said that they'll send it to the other people, right?
So they're not sending the money, they're sending the information.
Yeah, so when they send the information, is that when they start charging interest, or do they wait, like do the credit card companies wait until the end of the month and then they charge?
So they'll just choose a day of the month randomly to send the information of your outstanding balance to the credit bureaus. And it could be any day of the week.
But if they send it to the credit bureau and you have an outstanding balance, then does that lower your credit score?
It does. So if you're,
You pay it off at the end of the
even if you pay it off the end of the month. So if you go like, you use 100% of your credit and then pay it all off, it looks, if you catch it on the wrong, if they send your outstanding balance on the wrong day, then you're going to have a horrible credit score. It's not cool, yeah.
Is there
So.
any, like, when you do pay that off, will it, like, fix itself, or is it just screwed?
So the credit score evolves over time. So if it'll note when your balance goes down the next month, and your score will get better. Or if your balance goes up the next month, your score will get worse. So the credit bureaus are getting new credit balances every month from these, if you have a credit card or a bank account, or does that make?
What I've been told is it's sort of an average, so if you have that low point, even if you pay it off, does it wind up somewhere in the middle, or does it go back to the top?
So it evolves. So it takes all the data into consideration, and there's a certain time where the data drops off from its records.
Okay.
So, but it does. It's an algorithm. The most popular credit score group is called FICO, and their algorithms are like top secret on how the score is actually computed. Yeah, Caleb.
So this is just theoretical and funny. So if you do this your entire life, how old are you right now, Shane?
So I'm 42.
You have $40,000 that you can just spend at any time. You keep every 6 months asking for more and
Yeah.
more and more and more. And then you're 75, you're retired, you don't need anything.
Yeah.
Your credit score, you have a house, you don't need your credit score for anything.
Yeah. Just go hog wild.
Just full spend it. Just,
Yeah.
What's the point of you not doing that? That's my thought process of just like, I've had this credit score for this my entire
Well,
life. Why not just
then
do this?
the credit card companies will go after your estate, and so your children will get less of inheritance if you can't pay it off. So, yeah, Bernard. Twice a month, yeah.
So, I mean, are there times where you don't pay something off and your credit score goes down?
Sorry, if I don't, because I'm paying it off twice a month.
Yeah.
So are there times I'm not paying it off twice a month, or?
No, because if it happens in one of the middle days.
Oh yeah. So I get emails all the time saying your credit balance went up, and my score My score is usually, in the low 800s, but sometimes it dips because the credit bureaus got information about a balance of on and off time. Yeah, like we did some spending for our house for a new AC, and that was really expensive. But I used my card to get the cash back, and I knew I was gonna take a hit on my score, but it was temporary, so I was okay because it bounces right back again. Yeah.
Would you still take a hit on your score if you paid it off like immediately? So you could get all the money from the cash back, but then not owe anything in interest?
I think that would probably be fine if that very day you paid it off. If I should be more on it because I just don't do that. I just kind of, let it paid because I don't care enough. I'm not in the market for a rental or a mortgage, and I'm fine with low 800s. I don't have to get.
That's pretty good.
It's fine, yeah. And if I was obsessed about being the top 860, then maybe I would do something like that. But I don't worry about it. Yeah, Ben.
So just to like be clear, because I'm a little confused. So
Yeah.
like, in a sense, I were to go buy like something for $20, and say that I paid it off right then, my credit score would go higher than if I paid it off a month from now, but I didn't go over the limit.
Correct. Credit is about available credit, not necessarily whether you're using credit. If you're actually using it and you're borrowing money, it's more that you're paying interest than you're getting a bad credit score. As long as you pay everything on time, whether the minimum payment or the outstanding payment, your credit should be fine. It's just the more you're using and interest is being charged, then your balance is growing, and so then it just gets harder and harder to pay off. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So here's the rule with credit cards. So this is when you know to cut them up. So I would cut them up if you pay late fees or interest more than once a year. So the moment you don't pay your full balance at the end of the month, you get charged interest because you've now used the credit card to borrow money. So on any credit card statement, it's going to show a little table that says interest, and it better say 0 for your whole year. Occasionally, it may happen where you slip up and you don't quite pay it, and I feel like it's okay to have grace for one time where you have an outstanding balance. But if that happens more than once, I'd say don't use a credit card. It's not worth it. The cash back's not worth it. The travel's not worth it. If you're actually using a credit card to borrow money, it's the worst possible lender. You do not want to borrow money from a credit card because they will trap you and ensnare you. And so in my mind, you're responsible enough to use credit cards if you're not using it to borrow money. Yeah?
So you really just want to use a credit card based off of whatever you have in your debit card.
Yeah, you just want to use the credit card to build your credit so that then people trust you. So you get good rentals, you get low-cost mortgages, you get to just have all access to goods and services. That's what credit's for. It's one of our most valuable assets we want to protect. But we don't want to use it to actually borrow money. That's just like we should have cash to pay for things. And so my general rule, if it's more than once a year, I would straight up cut up that credit card and never use it again. Debit cards are good alternatives since they only act as a medium of exchange and they do not give you the opportunity to borrow money. You do not want to borrow money from a credit card company. You do not want to have them dazzle you and hook you with dopamine and then conquer you with that minimum payment. That is a bad use of a credit card. So you want to, when you think about borrowing, you just want to borrow from yourself. That's what an emergency fund is. So emergency fund is where you have 3 to 6 months of cash savings, and that will eliminate almost all of your short-term cash crises. And when you have a cash crisis and you need that $400, if you have the emergency fund, you're basically borrowing from yourself, and you're very lenient on your payback. You're not going to charge yourself interest. You have full options. You can give yourself a 20-year payback period. You can give yourself a 0%, really good loan, interest-free, no hard deadline. Everything works great. You're very kind, generous, good-looking. So you're the perfect lender. So the emergency fund is really critical, in my mind, to avoiding credit predators, is having that 3 to 6 months of living in the form of cash. Yeah?
Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah, please.
So when I was in the class we did banking for
So it's not just for credit cards, it's just for living. So it's basically if your earned income goes away, can you be able to live your same life for 3 months or 6 months? The more unstable your income is, the longer you should have an emergency fund for. So right now we have about